24th. I'm just seeing how many members are here. 6. Hey, John, good to see you.
Hi, Larry.
5, 6. I think we have 10 people, unless I miscounted. I don't see Dan. Dan, are you here? No, Dan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we have quorum, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for February 17. I think we made a lot of changes to the minutes with a few more changes not happening. So I'm going to ask for a motion to either accept the latest version of the minutes or we can table it. So do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
Motion to accept the minutes as is.
A second?
Yep, second.
Dennis. Okay. All right. All in favor? I'm going to do a roll call.
Larry, is there anybody who objects or has some changes they need to get in there or want?
Yeah, I was going to ask any further discussion? Or not? You're on mute, but not mute.
I'm fine with it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Anyone? Okay, I guess we're good. Okay, roll call. Bernard? Okay. Jack?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Dan's not here. Paul?
Yes.
Dennis?
Yes.
Tom? Okay. Brad?
Yep.
Sharon? Okay. Brian?
Yep.
John Mahoney?
Yes.
Okay. Larry? Yes. All right, the vote is 10-0-0. Okay, first on the agenda tonight is the Inspections Commissioner. And we have Barry Winkler here tonight. Hi, Barry. You're on mute, Barry. You can unmute. We'll give him a second.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah.
Hi, Barry. Welcome
Hello,
to
guys.
Good to finally see you. And you have the floor.
Okay, the inspection department is in the midst of taking on a lot of permit applications, and we're admittance related to the buildings and the town schools as well. We have
Barry, can I hold you for a second? I'm sorry.
yeah.
Dennis and Brad, can you put it on mute because there's a lot of feedback. Thank you. Go ahead, Barry. Sorry.
Sure. Do you have any questions for the building department?
Larry, are you getting enough training and education on any new code stuff coming down the pipeline so Foxborough can keep up with all the new energy codes and building codes and all of that?
Building codes have been consistent. The changes that are going to be coming is the new stretch energy that the town will put together with a warrant article for the stretch energy to be adopted through the town. That's going to be coming. Hopefully the town wants it, and we'll see that spring meeting. But as far as training for codes right now, everything is online, and what we have webinars. It's very, very few right now, but yeah, anything that comes in, of course, we're passing it along. We do have some electrical codes that have come into play related to swimming pools and bonding of such for, when you walk around on the pool decks. And so it's a little bit of adjustment with the electrical contractors within the town because they're not familiar with it. But our department has made as many of those contractors aware as possible. Related.
And Barry, if the town adopts that code, what do you think the additional cost per new house would be just in materials and labor?
I think it'll be pretty much the same. And I say that because most contractors are not only focusing on Foxborough, they focus on, surrounding communities. And a lot of the surrounding communities are a stretch community. And the developers and contractors have it already set into their contracts as to how they're going to figure out a bid for how much it's going to cost to renovate whoever's home, bathroom, kitchen, or construct a home. So to be competitive, of course, when they realize that there's no stretch energy, they can bring the number down with all the other contractors related to stretch. But I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing in the plans, for example, spray foam. Most people are familiar with that for, an insulation material. It's rather expensive related to, if you figure out how much it costs for batted insulation, the regular spun glass, fiberglass insulation's a difference, but the savings in energy is enormous.
Does your department have the equipment to do the air testing, or do you have to bring in a third party to certify that?
That would have to be through their own. Those people would have to have that within it. There's what's known as a HERS rater. So they have to be certified. That HERS rater does that. They give an initial upfront statement. This is how the design of this house meets the stretch energy code related to the windows, related to the insulation, related to how tight the building is, related to the HVAC. They do a door test, a blower test. They put that all together initially in their initial, here's how we're going to design things. And then they do their series of tests that the building department doesn't have the onus to do so, the responsibility. It's that professional that does it, which, that's the third party. And they hand out a certificate at the end of the project showing compliance with the stretch energy regulations.
So what happens if somebody doesn't meet it?
Well, if they don't meet it, they won't get that certificate, and therefore, they won't be coming to the building department because they know the building department won't be able to give them a certificate of occupancy. I'm talking for a brand new building.
Yep. Thank you, Barry.
Sure.
Yeah, it might be useful to give a 30-second backgrounder on stretch energy code, what it is, what it means to the community.
So stretch energy code is basically just saying, okay, we don't want to waste energy. We want to save as much as we can. And that's pretty much it. It's not, it's really not that involved. 30-second, let me think a little more. It's basically just saying, okay, we know maybe there's a manufacturer that makes a window that's kind of loosey-goosey, but we're going to make you, or rather, we're going to require you to have a window that's not loosey-goosey, that has air tightness around it, the insulation around it, the outlets below the window in the wall, let's say, has gaskets around it to prevent loosey-goosey throughout the building. Same thing with the HVAC system, so things are tight. They're wrapped with insulation around the ductwork, keep it tight so we're not losing energy. Water pipes, heat related, anything that's generating any kind of power like that, it's to conserve it. So they put insulation around the pipes. There's a brand name called Armaflex, which basically in the industry, most people in the industry understand what that is. And it's just a styrofoam, really tight, dense black styrofoam that goes around your pipes. You may have seen it in your own home. Traditionally, the water pipes, the hot water tanks and things like that are wrapped with a lot of insulation. It's all part of it to keep things really tight, to keep and conserve the energy.
Jack,
it's not a formal state code.
You'll also see a move away from 2x4 to 2x6 construction to accommodate all the insulation.
Well, I mean, you could do 2x4, but that would be depending on how many stories you went up structural wise. But let's say you went with a standard cape, 1 story, you could do a 2x4, and the spray foam, the density of it, they have a open cell insulation, which has all these bubbles in it. So they call it an open cell. And then they have the closed cell, which is a high density with almost no bubbles in it. And it's really tough. It's rigid. The open cell, you can push your finger into it. It's really soft. The hard closed cell is very hard. It's hard as cement, it seems. And with the closed cell, you'll achieve your what's called R value, related to how much you're holding in for energy to meet the stretch energy code. So you could gain floor space because you're constructing with 2x4 versus 2x6 or 2x8, rather than using maybe a batted insulation, a spun glass, fiberglass insulation, where you would need that depth. You'd need a 2x6 or greater to meet the stretch energy code, so.
Good. Hey, Larry, we met with Barry about his budget, and the budget is essentially flat. It's a 1.5% increase, but if you look at the dollar amount, it's $6,500 year-over-year increase. I didn't see any thing to be concerned about in this budget. Barry, there was one thing I think you were looking into, and that was where the part-time building inspector salary is accounted for. Were you able to figure that out?
Well, yeah, that was with the perma coordinator.
Okay.
So that's where that is.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So we had no concerns about the budget overall. I don't know if anybody else has any questions or concerns about the budget as it's laid out today.
Yeah, I have a question.
Dennis?
Yeah, hi, Barry. Dennis Keefe. Just a question on your office supplies. Year to date through January, you're quite a bit over in that line item. Is something else hitting that line item?
If you can point me in the direction of that, where is that?
That's on your year-to-date budget under office supplies. The budget is $1,000, and through the end of January, you spent about $1,700.
Okay, yeah, that's related to iPads, cell phones, that kind of thing. Tools for the office to be able to do inspections out in the field.
So you called them the office supplies? Is that basically it?
I believe so, yeah, when we went through that.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions for Barry? I guess we're good, Barry. Thank you for coming, and then welcome to Foxborough. I know you've been here, what, a couple months now? A month and a half? 2 months?
Yeah, a couple months. Yeah, going on my, I think, third month, March. I started December 7th, so.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So anyway, welcome. Thank you for coming. And if we have any questions, Brian or one of the liaisons will reach out to you. But I think for now we're good. So thank you for coming.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. This is new to me as a building commissioner. I was a building inspector in Brookline for 19 years. So now I'm in a position of the building commissioner. So these kinds of things putting together is all new to me. So I do appreciate Brian's help. We had talked before we had this meeting, and others have helped me. And I wanted to say thank you. And, if there's anything that you can help me with, like presentation wise, I would appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Barry.
Okay, we're good. Thank you, Barry.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, bye-bye.
Okay, next on the agenda is Rob. Hi, Rob. How are you?
Doing well. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Rob is the director for SEMREC. And go ahead, Rob. All yours.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me again this year. The budget request for this year, the assessment estimate is flat. From last year, it's $300,000, and that's us taking advantage of some aggressive grants initiatives this year to offset that cost to $300,000. So nothing's changed since last year as far as the actual requested dollar amount. I'm pleased to report that we've moved into a new facility in Foxborough, and we're fully operational. So some big things happened in SEMREC over the past year. And we're happy to continue to grow and serve the community and hopefully keep offsetting that cost for you.
How's your new place? Is it nice?
It's excellent. Yeah, it's beautiful. And that was, as we stated last year, funded exclusively through State 911 non-tax dollar surcharge grant program. So a huge value add for public safety in the communities we serve.
Hey, Bill, are you, well, before I jump to Bill, does anyone have any questions for Rob?
Rob, I'm fairly uneducated on your center, but I'm guessing you guys have GPS where all your vehicles are, so you know who the closest person is dispatch, or how does that work?
So right now we do not. The fire services that our colleagues in the fire services have adopted the GPS in the vehicles, and we use that as a tool to kind of guide our decision. Most of our dispatching and how we determine which asset we deploy to a certain incident is based off of what we call districts or geographical boundaries, subdivisions of the towns, and pre-planned. So a certain street, an address on that street will be assigned a district, and that'll drive, based on the incident and the incident acuity, what resources go to it. We use the GPS more for if there's a non-traditional unit passing by that incident, maybe we'll divert them and just send it close as appropriate. But that technology is still developing, still new for us.
So basically, there might be some area, one town, that's always going to get another town's services just based on where the stations are and outlines of this district plan?
No, so the like Foxborough, all Foxborough addresses are serviced by Foxborough apparatus and Foxborough police. There's occasion where we call mutual aid, where services are called from other communities, and that's all pre-planned, and it's pretty well balanced between the communities.
And how's the expansion discussion? Is there any other communities looking to join, or is that kind of on pause right now?
No, we have quite a list of interested communities that we're starting to talk with. Obviously, we just moved in a few months ago, so we're still getting our feet under us as far as that. But we've had some really great conversation with some neighbors about joining. If
a town does not border one of the existing towns, but maybe is like one town away, would that prevent you from bringing them on, or do we got to move out and move out as a blob, not skip any towns?
Nope, a town not being contiguous with the current district doesn't preclude them from joining. We certainly have the technology and the means to dispatch. We can dispatch a town like Pittsfield, where it's way out west. We wouldn't endeavor to do that. There's other centers between here and there, but one or two towns is well within our kind of striking distance.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Hey, Rob, once we bring on new communities, does that positively affect the amount of money we have to invest per town? Is that how it works? Is it evenly distributed?
Correct. So as we add communities, we become eligible for increased annual allocation of money from the state 911 program. So the way that works is based off of population and call volume. So as we add a community, our costs don't increase in a linear fashion. So hopefully our goal is to increase our costs to take on that operation, keep that as small as possible while maximizing our increase in grant revenue, therefore decreasing the individual town liability every year.
Hey, Rob, do you have a capacity to grow? So for instance, if we add two more new towns to SAMRAC, do you have enough? I assume you probably need at least one or two more 911 dispatch. So do you have capacity to grow at that location?
Yeah, so we designed this facility to grow. When we first set out to build this facility, we examined what other like entities kind of experienced as far as expansion and what their biggest cost driver was. And we found that most other 911 districts or centers, when they expanded, they wound up spending like $3 million per console position because they had to do a full renovation. When we designed this, we built expansion into the model so that we can spend less than $100,000 to expand. And all that is grant funded and grant eligible. But we designed it for expansion in mind, to expand, minimize our cost for expansion while also decreasing our impact to operations.
Dennis?
Yes, I'm going back to 2019, and the actual expense was $692,000, then $508,000 2020, and now $310,000. Are those real linear savings over the course of those 3 years through this program?
So those are true savings. What we were able to do is we worked with the state to revamp a portion of the grant program. And as part of that, the first 3 years of the community's membership in a regional entity like this, There's a aggressive grants program, so we have a lot more money eligible each of those 3 years. This would be year 2 of that. So that's why we're seeing a $300,000 assessment this year. As we get into the 4th and 5th year, that becomes less, and we start going back into our traditional grant allocations. So over the next year should be about the same. The next years after that, if we don't see an expansion in the entity, and we don't see an increase in grant revenue, that assessment should go back up. But our goal is to expand kind of on track with that reintroduction of those expenses back into the communities to try and keep it level.
Rob, if you're bringing, sorry, Dennis, if you're bringing on a new community, is there any hesitancy where, they have a longtime person, they don't want to see them let go? Is there any pressure or negotiating where, maybe if we got to hire one more 911 person, we have to bring the person in from that town and save the job? Or is there any kind of thing like that? I'm just concerned that if we take on an employee that's been around for a long time, we might have, bigger health insurance costs and that type of thing. I don't know. Do your employees, are they part of collective bargaining? Are they part of, the state retirement accounts?
So the SEMRC is a 911 district, so we're not a department of the town. We're a separate municipal corporation, which is nice because what happens is we're actually a member of Bristol County Retirement System. Our members are certainly able to collectively bargain, but Bristol County versus Norfolk County has a much lower cost to be a member. Cost per employee is a lot less. The Bristol County Retirement System is a little better funded right now. So the cost per employee for our membership versus being a town employee, especially Norfolk County, is a lot less. As far as bringing on employees or being compelled to bring on an employee from a former agency or like a town that closes down, we wouldn't be necessarily compelled to bring on any individual employee. We keep that very open, very competitive. If the employee was that good, I'm sure they would compete well, and we'd love to kind of keep that knowledge and bring them on board. If an employee doesn't choose to compete, that's their prerogative, and if they don't compete well, then they might get beaten out by another candidate. So.
Larry, you're back on mute.
Larry, you're on mute. Rob, if I could just ask, are we eligible for technology grants as well as financial grants?
Well, a lot of the money that we received grant money for was, invested into technology, public safety technology, to enhance the way we do business and kind of enable a lot of this regional public safety efforts. There, as a collective, kind of outside the state 911 program, the state also has community compact programs and best practices programs that, as a collective, as a multi-community group, we're more competitive for, and a lot of those are targeted for best practices and technology.
Okay, I just didn't know whether it's strictly that they give you the money and you spend it, or whether or not there's actually technology, there's actually mechanisms, whether devices that are available to be allocated as opposed to having to go spend it.
It's not just like they don't just give us a blank check and say, hey, you got $100, spend it the way you want. There's has to be used for very specific purposes that are outlined in the grants, and they're audited and have to be approved before they're expended. And part of that is technology.
Okay. So it's not like they have a stash of like new type of radios or some new type of other equipment that they can build out per person or per officer or something like that, as opposed to just money in lieu of buying that.
No, we don't get equipment in lieu of.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Paul.
And Rob, just a quick question. You mentioned trying to keep expenses flat and expansion being a benefit. If we don't bring in another community, do you have a sense what that means, say 1-2 years out in terms of expenses?
So the original projection of the 911 district operation was actually $540,000 to $560,000 per community per year. We've actually kept that well under there.
Yep.
Just through numerous grant programs and just efficiencies that we realized as we rolled out. If we didn't expand and the grant programs remained flat as well, I'd say that we would grow just like any other town department where we'd see, 3% max increases in
Whatever normal growth is.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Rob, for town to join, is it something the selectmen would ultimately authorize, the police and fire chiefs, the town voters? Who is the decision maker to say, yep, we're going to join?
So it's an agreement between the board of directors of the 911 district and the candidate community. So if X community wants to join, we begin negotiations with the board of directors for the 911 district. Once an agreement is fleshed out, it would go to be formally adopted by our board, and then it would be presented to the boards of selectmen for the current member communities and they have an opportunity to object. And that's how that process would work.
Rob, does it have to be unanimous vote to add someone on?
It does not, no.
So it's just a simple majority, 3-2,
Majority.
whatever, 2-1.
Correct.
Okay. Hey, Bill, do you want to add anything? Do you have anything to add? Bill, you're still on mute.
This, I guess. I'll still have to get used to this. Sorry about that. So good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to say a few words. Good to see Rob. And Rob's a very capable guy. I'm sure he can handle himself in terms of all the questions that you have. But we've been very fortunate to have Rob as our director, because he really has sort of been the boots on the ground trying to pull this whole program together. The board that we currently have is 4 members, and we currently are looking at a 5th right now, and I think there's 3 other potentials that we're considering as well. So it looks like the word is, and this is just, and we just really became fully operational really in December of this past year. So that meant Foxborough has been operational for the past year and a half or so, almost, it'll be 2 years, I think, in June, when we ended up, or July, and we took over, maybe a little bit later than that, but 2 years ago. But we started with just Mansfield and Foxborough out of the gate, and then Norton and Easton came on in December of this past year. So we're very fortunate that, because we have access now because of the state 911 money that comes out. The state really wants these regional groups to be formed, and we saw the 4 towns had the forethought to actually pull this together, and it's been a significant savings to all of us. And the amount of money that's coming in from the state is just blows my mind. But what's good about it is that there's a dedicated resource of funding just for this purpose, and so it's not going to go away, and it's not like anyone else can really tap into it. It's very restricted in how that money can be used. So Rob has sort of mastered his way through that process. I think what's probably even more interesting is the fact that we sort of were the first ones to really put it together successfully in many ways, because we were used more or less as the model for a lot of other communities to start following. We even went so far as to create the right financing plan for the whole project going forward, because we restructured the debt in such a way, or created we went and bonded the debt for the building for like 5 years, and then we'll pay the thing off, as opposed to waiting for grants every year to get to pay the thing as we go. That allowed the state to actually spread the money out to other regional groups, and allow them the ability to pay off their facilities in a reasonable time frame too, and not have to wait every year just for the money to show up so they can keep the project going. So I think it's been a huge success story. It's a great story for the town. Just to give you some perspective, we were paying close to $1 million a year for dispatch before we went to Semric. We're now paying about $300,000, and if we end up growing the base, it's conceivable that number could go down even further. So it's a good story for everyone. And I think we all should be very proud of it. So I know I am, and as a person who serves as chairman of this committee now. So, and I know that all my colleagues on the board are equally as proud too. So that's my spiel for tonight, Mr. Chairman. Now you're off. Yeah. Yeah, we'll never get used to that.
It's so sensitive. I touch it and it's gone. But anyways, thanks for the update, Bill. Any further questions for Rob? Nope. I guess we're good. Rob, good seeing you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
See you, Rob.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the police chief. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Good evening, everybody. How are you, Mr. Chairman, fellow board members?
It's all yours, Chief Grace.
It's easy enough. All right, well, first we'll just start off with a technology challenge where I'm going to share my screen. So give me one moment.
You haven't mastered this yet, Mike?
You know what? I'm always on the receiving end. So this is fun.
New
We'll
for
take
you.
it.
There you go.
Yep,
Nice.
I have 3 screens to share. So can everybody see that?
Yes, we're good.
Yes.
All right. So everybody has their packets from the budget that was done, I assume. And I can tell you, this is only my second year of doing the budget, and it was amazing having this process and this format to show the increases, the decreases, the line items, as we are a line item budget. So that was extremely helpful. And let me just, so I also, on top of having that as a guide, I also have a quick little PowerPoint presentation to highlight a couple areas. And if anybody has something, please just put it out there, ask me. I may not be able to see if you raise your hand because I'm running out of screen. So if someone wants to speak up, I can, I'll find you. So one thing I want everybody to know is our police department and who they are. And I just want to tell you about the people we have, because at the end of the day, law enforcement is about the people and it's about the community they serve and how they do it. And here, just as an example of Adam Burns, when he was over in Afghanistan, he was a Black Hawk pilot for almost 20 years in the Army, and myself and Megan Allen helping the Moms Club this year. And as we grow as an agency, we change. We change our personalities. On to the left, we have 2 new coming on. And to the right, I have some senior officers who noticed that there was a charity event going down the Lane property, and they went down, and that's Sergeant Collins and Jimmy Head, and they said, let's join in. And that's the kind of agency you have, just to let you know, when we talk about community policing and who the officers are. This year, as we know, with Gillette and COVID, we were tasked by a variety of different challenges, because in February, we were in the unknown. What's going to happen? So Gillette came to us and says, listen, we got to try to put a plan here, maybe getting some fans in, a partial. So we teamed with them in the fire department, and we did several mock drills using our resources, their planning, so they could petition the state, which was probably the only one in the state of Mass that was going to try to run a large venue. And this was the model. Sadly, as you'll see on the next screen, we did not end up with fans. We ended up with cars on the field because of the pandemic. And you'll probably never see that again. And hopefully this year we're up and running. But what we did see as a change is we saw our community change in a way, and not so much change, but they came out. They came out at all levels. And here, like Ocean State Job Lot, their management team would reach out to us for PPE supplies. Because remember, in the beginning of this, there was none of it. It didn't exist, and people were worried. And last year, we actually had school for the first half of the year, if we can remember. And we were out there with our kids at the IGO school. And sadly, on the right-hand side, things happen in our profession where it's tragic. And that happens, and it's a sad part of the job. This year, we saw one of our residents, Jerry Sibley, who I've known for a long time. He was, I was a shift commander that night. Dave Fiscalo at the time was the patrol officer who drove Jerry to the hospital. We found out that his son had died. And Jerry worked for 13 years in his son's name to get the hands-free law in place. And I just wanted to bring that as something that changed in law enforcement, and probably for all of us on this conference, because we are hands-free now. And I just wanted to touch upon a couple of those. And we cannot forget our JCs, okay? Even during a pandemic, they were awesome. They were reaching out. How do we make sure that we still connect with the community? And they partnered with us with Dairy Queen. So when we saw kids and things were a little safer, that we could give them certificates for being great kids, and it was awesome. In regards to the budget, here we go. So the command structure, and I apologize that PDF is not fantastic, but essentially we run a chief, a deputy chief, 2 lieutenants. We have our sergeants, our commanders. We have our patrol division, our SROs, administrative, and detectives. And the agency consists of 39 staff. I don't consider the reserves as my operational cost per se. I have 24 of those. In order to operate Gillette, that additional resources needed around town to manage traffic and stuff like that. This year, I will say, as like the previous years, is the town manager gives us very strict guidelines as department heads. This year, we were under the guidelines of a 2.5% budget. My budget today completed is 2.4%. It's under the guidelines. And each year, as I develop this budget, as I do a full comprehensive cost of per officer and what they cost, because it does change from year to year. They move up in steps. They get additional time potentially. They change positions. They work different shifts. They may go on and finish up their education and receive additional stipends. So all of that is taken into account, and I break down the cost of every single officer to give my baseline of what this budget is going to cost for salary. Because as we know, salary, which I'll talk about here, is 87% of my police budget is tied into the salaries. And these are the salaries that I don't touch. These are the set costs per the collective bargaining agreement. So when we talk about the police budget, over $5 million, 80% of that is already established. 9% is my expenses, 4% is capital outlay, and 10%, 10.8 goes to overtime. And when establishing overtime, it's critical to know that it's based on that I have everybody show up. That's ideal. Anyone who has been in law enforcement knows that things just happen. Things I can't control on a regular basis. And even when I sit here today, I have 5 officers who can't come to work. One of them has a broken bone in his neck from a car accident at work. Another one had his ligaments reattached, cadaver ligaments from his knee from a work-related incident. I have some medical issues, and I have a pending retirement. And one officer who just graduated last Friday, who will now enter his FTO process, who will not count until he's completed that. So when you talk about 5 patrol officers not showing up, that's essentially 1/3 of my shift. And that happens. It isn't, most of these situations are all investigated. As my force gets older, we all get older. People get sick, and we have to manage that. When it comes to the delivery of the services, just to give you an idea, is our bare minimum per shift is a sergeant and 4 officers. That's my 3 sectors in the community and 1 officer at in the building at all time. This year, trying to meet some of the challenges, I've actually dropped my midnight staffing down to a level we probably haven't seen in 15 years. Some of that was connected to the state mandates with COVID, with Patriot Place and bars closing at 9 o'clock, and those calls for services diminishing a little. The 8 to 4 shift, 12, and the 4 to 12 shift are essentially, they have one officer per the entire shift. My sergeants are 1 for 1 when they take days off. There's not 2 sergeants working, so they have to be replaced. Hopefully this July, one of my officer who is set to retire. It's been a very slow process. The Norfolk County retirement kind of ceased to operate during COVID, and everything slowed down. And it did not help that medical records were at Norwood Hospital, and Norwood Hospital was destroyed, and part of the medical records could not be accessed. Currently, if people are familiar with Foxborough, we know we have a great school system. I have 3 kids in the system today, a senior, a junior, and a 7th grader. It's awesome. But we really run 2 school districts in regards to what the police need to cover. The charter school is running 1,800 students now from high school to elementary level, and they are back now. They have been remote all year, but they are back on a hybrid model starting this week. So we anticipate, as we see more kids coming to school from a variety of diverse communities, that our services will be needed to assist the school. One issue is that 10% of where does the overtime go? So contractual time off that officers are entitled to. Contractually, they're allowed to take it. How many officers off per shift is set in the contract. I adhere to it. I don't go beyond it, but they're entitled to it. And training is a 96 hours. That is required. I can't cut that number anymore. That is your minimum requirement for your the NPTC state mandates for the offices, and then our CPR and our weapons platform training. And I can tell you with the police reform, that number in regards to hours is going to drastically increase. Court overtime, historically, that's what we run. I apologize. This year has been slow as the trial courts haven't been able to really run a jury, but they're still running all their hearings and working on a variety of different cases through Zoom, trying to dispose of cases of less serious crime. And then we have, on average, we use about 5 sick days per officer, but that comes with a cost because I need to replace them. And then we have our training for our Metro-like officers, field training, which training officers receive a small stipend to train all the new hires. And of course, we have investigations. The investigation over time is when we receive calls for service that the detectives need to go investigate off hours, weekends, or any follow-ups that run beyond their normal hours.
Hey, Chief, it's Larry. Can you go back one page, please?
Yeah.
I have a question. I know in this page, the training overtime is 109,000, give or take.
Yeah.
And in the budget book, it's only 80,000. I just want to make sure, 80,500. I just want to make sure you have the right amount.
No, I'm not proposing that. I'm telling you what it cost me. I have to find ways to make it work.
Okay.
If you want to give me 109,000, Larry, I'll put that on the record and we can move forward. But those are when I break it down per cost. So then I got to modify. I maybe got to squeeze here. Maybe I pull a school resource officer out of a school for a day and have them cover a shift. Or I have a detective who's working on cases, has to work a different role to make that happen.
I don't want you, I don't want, I don't want the town to be short-sighted. If you really need the training and, it's something that, we don't want to cut corners.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna, the new police reform with the many hours of training, I will be probably starting to see this July. I can't I don't know what the hours are or the programs. And this year, because of COVID, we had to move to a remote-based training. So I was able to find companies that took some of our mandated training, and they were able to build platforms, though I would have to buy it. Some of the, and a lot of the training we could do on shift.
Okay.
Reduce the overtime, which I can tell you had never been done before in policing. Some of it's effective, some of it is not, but there's options in there that can alleviate that as we venture into it.
Okay. Thank you.
So this is where I stand today on my line item on my year to date. So with the overtime, because that's always a concern. And so my training overtime, I'm 60% of the way through the year, and I'm my head's above water. I will say that with COVID, I have a lot of vacation time sitting in the bank for my police officers. One, no one could take a vacation time. The town's been has worked with the union to extend a week extra, so it isn't all dumped into the budget. But moving forward, when the weather breaks and hopefully the restrictions open up, I think I have about 5,000 hours sitting in the bank that officers have earned who can use. So I'm running my math on that right now on a regular basis to see where it comes out. So
Sorry, Chief. Sorry, Chief. This is Paul. I don't know if you can see me.
I can see you, Paul.
Just first an editorial comment. I feel like last year when you came and talked to us, you got a good 30 or 40 minutes of questions on overtime. So this is great. It's very good that you laid it out and we're able to see it like that. I just wanted to go back to Larry's point. So you've got some additional training. How much insight do you have in terms of what the actual requirements are going to be? You said it's July, you think?
Well, I put it this way. I just contracted with the use of force training, the school resource, some of these MOUs and some of these guidelines, they're in the commission. The teams are going to be they haven't been put together yet to study these.
Okay.
And they're going to start rolling them out over the course of the year. So they're not going to roll all of it July 1st because the commission can't even be formed till July 1st. So we're going to see a staggered rollout and some of them up to 2 years. So I don't anticipate that July 1st, I'm going to get an additional mandate and then every police department in Massachusetts be unable to reach that goal. I will say that the legislators did not do a great job in finding the funding for this because that was never added on to these requirements.
So if I could just add a few thoughts here, Chief, on that point. I actually spent some time. I serve on a committee with mass managers and police chiefs from around the state, and we had a long talk about this very issue last week. And one of the major discussion points was funding, where the state imposed a whole new set of requirements on cities and towns and their police departments, but didn't provide the funding to do it. So the question we're going to go back to is, okay, if you put your money where your mouth is, if you want to do this kind of training, which I think is necessary, by the way, I don't have any question about that. But the issue is you have to support it because, on the fire side, it's like you look at the police training facilities and you look at the fire side, and it's like night and day because the facilities they have for fire actually have a dedicated revenue stream that comes out of an insurance additional surcharge that goes on every single house in Massachusetts. So as a result, that money gets directly towards training for firefighters, which I think is a great idea, and I think it's something that makes sense. The funding for police officers was tied to rental cars, and how many rental cars do you think got rented this past year during COVID? So I think that's the challenges that they're faced with is a night and day in terms of funding. So they're going to have to come up with a new method of funding that, and it can't be just based out of the existing revenue stream because there's enough strains on the existing budget funding to not be able to fund that situation properly. So I do think you're gonna have to look at a new way to do that, and that's something that we're pushing for at the state level.
That was really helpful. So we don't even know if it's an unfunded or a funded mandate yet. So it's,
That's correct.
Well, I will say it is a mandate.
Yes,
regardless of
yeah,
whether
yeah.
it's funded.
it's either unfunded or funded, but it's, yeah,
It
got it.
it
Thank
still
you.
has to get done.
thank you.
So before I get into the expenses, at this particular, there's a $93,000 increase on the salaries across the board on the $4.580 million budget, which means that there's a couple step raises in there for police officers who hit some benchmarks. 2 or 3 of them, senior officers, finished up their bachelor's degrees and they got some additional money. And that also includes my animal control officer and my 2 administrative staff members. And so if anybody has any questions in regards to the salary part of the new gov items, there is some alarming, what I'm going to call pluses of over 30% increases. We're next to the deputy chief and the lieutenant, but those are not actual increases. The previously, their salaries were in there without their educational stipends. So all I did is I shifted it out of the stipend line item and moved it up into their salaries, so it projected their true cost. So there was just a shift that actually there was no 30% increase to those positions.
Stipend, Mike, stipend was 48. Do I have that right?
What's that, sir?
Stipend, sorry, it's Brian. Stipend was 48K. And so
Yeah.
it offset more than half of those increases.
Correct. And a couple of the other offices actually got their degrees. So
Yeah. Sure.
that's what the difference where they got a 10% bump.
Thank you.
Mike?
Yes. Yes, Dennis.
Hi, Dennis Keefe. I can see you've continued to improve with your budgeting from last year. You were one of the most impressive we met with, and you've even upped your game this year. When you do your budget, you said you do it position by position. So what you actually do, because I don't see this done consistently across the board, is if somebody's due for a COLA and a step, you budget the COLA and the step for that person. If somebody's due for a COLA, but they're at the top of the grade, they don't get a step, you just budget the COLA for that person. Am I getting that right?
You're 100% correct. And unfortunately, the police contract, the way it is, there are so many individual salaries. And when I say that, it's not the actual salaries themselves. There's only 6 steps, but each one could be on a different shift. Each one could have a different education. Each one could be in one of those 6 different steps within their years of service. Or they could be a detective, which has a different stipend than a school resource officer. And this isn't something that just kind of happened in the last year or two. It's just been part of the collective bargaining over the last decades, where they found where there were little stipends here and there. So I could have 3 detectives who all have different costs, because they could be on the job longer, they could work nights, they could have a different degree. So I found the only way to be truly accurate is to go through once a year and just make sure everything's lined up and accurate, so there's no gaps. And it also helps us to kind of to double check all of our numbers and munis, the town's payroll, to make sure everybody's accurate, especially when it comes for a contract. And now it's, I got to calculate how much it costs. It's a lot easier so it's a little bit of work, but I consider it well worth it.
Thank you. Very impressive.
One of the things I've looked at here is sometimes it's better to not look at the weeds, but back out a bit and not get hung up on the complexity of the individual stipends and the like. And when you do that, I look at salaries, for example, that show a little over 2% increase from last year, but almost 24% increase over a 3-year period. And a similar thing on expenses. 6% increase this past year, but over a 3-year period, 34% increases. That's not a sustainable model. The department has not grown that much. How is it that we grow salaries 24% over a 3-year period?
Well, part of that was there was actually an increase because when we did go to the regional dispatch, we had, I believe, 11 employees running our dispatch. So in order to fill the void of that budget, we needed to find a solution to manning the building. So some of that shift moved to the police departments back essentially, because in order to have someone in the PD on a regular basis, it isn't 3 people because we're 365 days a week, 7 days a week. It's close to 6 to 7 to man that. But we got an additional 3 bodies. And then I leveraged my current staff to fill in the gaps. So when you talk about the salary, yeah, the salary went up because we added 3 more positions to offset some of the costs, the savings with SEMRIC. Does that help at all?
Well, that's a partial answer. Of course, the expenses, which are a small part of the total, also went up actually even more, 34%.
Yeah, and we can get into the expenses and break that down. I have no problem with that. There were some, so you're right. When you talk a 34% increase, well, let's see what that 34%, because 34% is a big number. But when we're looking at the actual dollar value and where it went and what it's going to, when it's only 9% of the budget, it's kind of
over 100,000. It's not big numbers. That you're right in terms of the total. But the combination of the two, the salaries plus expenses going up over 8% a year, as I say, that's problematic.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
According to what I see here, it also. So, Jack, are you going against the 2019 actual expenses?
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the things that it looks like it didn't account for was the fact that you brought on the deputy police chief. Mike.
Yeah, but the deputy police chief, I didn't create a new position, believe it or not.
Okay.
There was a little bit of a salary increase, but I had 3 lieutenants. And in order to restructure it, I took one of the lieutenant positions out and made him a deputy chief. There was a little cost within the personal wage board on that line item for salary, but
yeah,
I didn't add just that full salary onto it. And I can tell you though, the manpower numbers haven't changed in, I believe, the last 3 or 4 years.
Well, you added 3 people.
Yeah, so that would have been 3 years ago. You're right. Sorry. In the when our SEMRIC started in that probably budget of 2020.
Right.
Yes.
it looks like that's reflected in the line for patrolmen. Am I seeing that right?
Correct.
It should be. That's where it was, right?
Yeah, that's where I see them. That's a huge increase there. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think it came out to almost $400,000 when you took into account the salaries, the stipends, and their full compensation package. Because the patrolman salary, that is just a salary. That's before they get stuck on the midnight shift and receiving a little additional money, or we take a lateral transfer in and he has his master's degree and he's compensated a little more. So it was almost $400,000 for those 3 positions. Anything else? All right. So on the expenses this year, my total expense increase is $25,000, 553. Of that, I have 26 line items of expenses. 13, I have no increases, requests whatsoever. There is one account, the computer account, which I'm looking to increase by $16,000. This And the additional 9,000 will go towards vehicle maintenance, the K-9 account, which never existed. Last year, I didn't take into account fuel costs. I will say last year, fuel was pretty low. This year, it's looking like it's going to increase. So I need to plan for that. Health and medical supplies because of COVID-19, that without a doubt is going to continue to be, and it was underfunded, the line item. So I needed to add some of that to make up. The $16,000, if anybody probably wants to know what that's for, is I am going to be moving, I did no CIP last year. I didn't ask the town for anything. I ended last year on a positive, turning back over $120,000 to the town. Is asking CIP to fund a body camera program for the police department. That quote for the police department is $97,000. But I don't want to have a situation where after the first year, I don't have the ability to fund the storage of the data. The amount of data that is generated from body cameras is massive. The IT department says they cannot possibly manage it, store it, and then deal with all the potential public requests from both the public and from the courts. So the vendor does that in a cloud-based system, and they are responsible for the keeper of the records as well. And that is a maintenance fee of $19,000 for, so I want to plan ahead and say, well, I need to plan for this. So I don't want to be sitting here next year saying, I need $19,000 to store the data. I'm going to sacrifice all my other line items except my essential ones to build in that cost now. And I'm going to be short, but I want to stay within the guidelines of the budget. So that's where the 16,000 is coming from. Any questions?
Hi, Chief Grace, John Mahoney here. One
Yes,
question
sir.
I have is do you have any members in your force who haven't taken the vaccine? And if they were to get sick and be out for a while now because of that, would there be any expenses we would want to be concerned about if there was a COVID-related sickness in your department?
Well, I have to probably be cautious about who I say is vaccinated and who isn't.
I'm not asking for names. I'm just assuming there's going to be a certain amount of your people who said no, right? So
Is without a doubt for medical conditions or based on personal choices, depending on their opinion about vaccines. If they're young, they're thinking of starting a family, they consider themselves not at risk. But yes, there is that cost potentially with the CARES Act come and gone and no funding available. They have been offered the vaccine. We have been very fortunate. The guidelines that we build in place every single day, the office is working. They're wearing a mask. We have the separation. The cars are clean. The building's clean. No one's eating lunch together. Unfortunately, it's kind of sad in so many ways because we're such social creatures. But we keep up on it. We have policies in place and guidelines so that we don't end up with a situation where we have an exposure that wipes out the whole shift. It hasn't happened yet, and everybody's mindful. And I think we all know independently, we're all different. We all stand a little farther from each other. We're all just have altered our life. And I'll tell you, since COVID happened, we never shut down. We shut the doors for 4 days. That was it. And then when I say shut the doors, we're worried about people coming in and potentially exposing the agency from outside. So we locked the front doors, but we never closed. We just limited access. But we've been running around the clock. I think my numbers are less than 6 or 7 who have had COVID. And none of it was spread within the department or from the department. We implemented a PPE protocol. We modified our response to non-emergency medical calls that had flu-like symptoms. minimizing the officer's exposure. And if they was a situation where they had to go, they had the full suit, KN95, face shield and everything with them to put on to prevent that from them getting COVID or bringing it home from their families.
If, I know there's some laws about what's considered an on-the-job injury, and for police and fire, it's a little bit different than everybody else. If somebody came down with COVID, is that kind of, the town would own the expense on it, or is it?
Well, no, we're not going to own the expense because someone got exposed, not related to work. No.
Okay.
The 111F law is specific about how and when someone qualifies for 111F. And all of that is thoroughly investigated in order to qualify it under Mass General Law. So it's a case-by-case situation. Of course, could you get it working? You absolutely could. There could be scenarios where it's a clear contamination and they received it. So far, so good at the Foxborough PD.
And this might be a Bill Keegan question, and obviously no details, but is there any pending claims against the department that the town might have to pick up the bill on at some point, or pay lawyers, or is there anything like that pending that we'd have to watch out for?
I can't see if Bill's still here with us, is he?
I can't tell. It looks like
His name's
Yeah.
there down the bottom.
Okay.
He's
He's
not.
still with us, but this is Mike Johns, and I'll try to answer that. If that question was in regards to 111F cases on for COVID, then the answer is no.
All right. Any other questions?
Hey, Chief, it's Brian. We talked at length about this. I think it's super smart that you're asking for the body camera money now, but for the benefit of the committee here, why now? Why are body cameras something that are important for the town of Foxborough?
We have 3 hours to discuss that.
Yeah. How about flip notes, maybe?
Well, I have a separate presentation on that, but I can tell you, in this day and age, and you talk about a 21st century policing model, one of the pillars, without a doubt, is technology and transparency. At this point, with I would say the shift in the public perception of police, I consider these situations a jump ball. All complaints that come to the agency, we have a very, very robust internal affairs policy directives that are utilized on any citizen complaint at any time, and they're very time consuming. Okay, they're extremely time consuming. They're very involved, and if there is an opportunity that we could have more data, more information, and have that available at our fingertips, showing the situation. The body camera will not show it all, but it's another tool for transparency for the agency. Many offices have asked for them. I can tell you this police department's, the officers involved, they're out there, they're doing the right thing. They do it every day, how they interact with the community. But I can tell you 8-9 months ago, I was asked personally, how come we don't have them? I have public requests galore. Chief, why haven't you made a step to do this? Historically, the Northeast is 5 years behind. We're 5 to 7 years behind the West Coast when it comes to technology. Having the tools that portray situations and explains them instantly, and with instilling the community with confidence that their police department is on the up and up is what I care about. And any tool that can maintain that, I want to offer that to my officers. I've spoken with town council, Myers attorneys, police officers are what we call liability bubbles. The job they do, the calls of service that they respond to. And, I showed you a couple pictures in the beginning of it where that was police work within the community, but there's another side to our job. There's another side of the 911 calls, of the screaming, we need help, the car accidents, the fights, the overdoses. It happens, it's happening. We handled 24,000 calls last year. We're a small department that has 3 major cities that go through it. We have an NFL stadium. We have 9 hotels and motels. We're going on a regular basis to a variety of different calls. And, there's a couple pending lawsuits now against the agency for very simple calls for service that he said, she said, and the litigation begins. The labor attorneys have said, listen, if you got a camera, because that's how we live now. We live in the moment. We live in YouTube, we live in social media. The public wants to see. And if they want to see, my goal is to give them the whole story, not a partial story. And so that's.
I have a couple quick questions.
Sure.
In the beginning, I think it was Boston when they tried to implement the cameras. The unions, some of the unions were fighting it. So if we were to spend money on this, will all your patrolmen wear it?
Well, and there's been a couple of case laws about this, about the actual carrying of a body camera and the change in working conditions. And you do have to bargain that. It is a change, how it's used, how it's reviewed, how the officers are trained. You have to bargain that part of it. But I can tell you one thing, I can't start a program. I can't even move in the direction if I don't have the funding. If I don't even have the support of the community of the town here, I'm really, it's like an empty negotiation.
Okay.
Because,
my follow-up question is, do you know of any surrounding police departments around Foxborough that's already have body cameras?
A lot of them have already, like Mansfield. They have them in their cars, the company that we're going to use. Many of them already have them in the cruiser. The state police have already moved past their pilot program. So they're moving in that direction. We have Upton has them. So I wouldn't say it is everywhere, but meaning just because the police department doesn't have them doesn't mean we shouldn't have them.
Agreed.
And I don't know who could sit here today and say what police officer would not want to have a body camera on.
Chief.
So
Sorry.
for now, do we have it on the patrol cars?
No,
Okay.
no, we have nothing.
All right.
I'll be honest with you, for all the thousands of custodies that we transport, I mean, 2 years ago, we just updated the cameras in the building for the cell blocks and the custody to add audio. That system was 17 years old and it had a 9-day retention ability. That defendant hasn't even got out of court and got an attorney yet to offer a public request where we didn't have the data anymore. So these systems, they save it. They save, because we get discovery requests all the time for every single call. We want the phone records, we want the 911 records, we want the booking records. So this would just be another tool because it helps. It helps with training. It helps with prosecution of cases, having this additional tool for the offices. And, it negates false accusations against the community. against the police department.
So my final follow-up question on the CIP request is, that's only for the body camera. It doesn't include cameras on the patrol cars on the cruise?
No. I have to be realistic, Larry, on my proposals of how much I can ask for. Let's take the there's 2 arguments on that. Is okay, sure, we could capture a lot of car stops, but what we're not capturing is all our calls for service that are outside the car, all the calls of service at potentially a Patriot Place or in hotels or motels or domestics, that you wouldn't get any of that information. So I took the calculated risk of say, let's put the camera where the officer is, and they do turn on for while they're going to those calls for service. It's not as good as a dash camera, but
So
you
I'm,
get
I'm
something.
just, I'm just asking the question. So if you have the dashboard cameras, how much will that cost the town?
I didn't even, you know what, Larry, I didn't venture into getting a quote. You know what, I think I have it here somewhere, but I didn't break it down yet.
That's fine. That's fine. Well,
Okay.
we can talk.
So,
good.
oh,
I'm good. Go ahead.
so I do have, if you have the patience for a 5-minute video on body cameras, I'd love to play it for you, or is that too much? I do, Mike Webb, I do want to make a disclaimer that it is slightly graphic. So for people at home, it isn't, but it is what it is in regards to that's what police work is sometimes. It isn't pretty. So if, I don't know, Larry, you want to take a vote and let your board decide whether or not they want to see it or not see it, or it's up to
Okay.
you.
Do I have a motion to watch the video?
I so move.
Second? Anyone?
Yep, sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Now I got to make sure my technology skills work. So here we go. This was a little bit of work this is like embedded in a YouTube Facebook account. Can anybody see that?
No.
No, that's all right. That's okay. I just got to go to a new screen. I got to vote. We got this. And I got to share sound. All right. How's that? Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep, looks good. Yep. Ready?
I'm going to. How's the volume? Is the volume okay?
Yes, we're good.
It's good. It's
Okay.
I
good.
think it'll be good. Yep.
My name is Jody Fanning. I'm the retired chief of police from the Cottonwood Police Department in Cottonwood, Arizona. I'm here talking today about the Walmart brawl that occurred in the Walmart parking lot in Cottonwood on March 21st, 2015. The police officers arrive on scene and they find a family unit of about 8 people. The father and one of the sons tells the officers that under no circumstances will you separate the family.
No, you're not gonna separate me from my family. We're gonna go ahead.
The sergeant tries to separate one of them. The physical altercation immediately erupts, with officers getting punched and attacked unprovoked. Sergeant Daniels had been involved in the fight right in the middle of the camera. And you'll see Sergeant Daniels, he goes off video to assist Officer Clark, who's been fighting with Enoch and David. So it's 2 against 1. Sergeant Daniels goes to Officer Clark's rescue. Sergeant Daniels engages one of the suspects. They go to the ground. The fight continues to about 2 minutes and 15 seconds, and that's about where Sergeant Daniels no longer has the ability to physically fight, and he's going to lose his life. He draws his firearm. However, when he pointed the firearm at Enoch, Enoch literally reached up and took his gun away from him. You'll hear Sergeant Daniels yell, "He's got the gun." He's referring to Enoch, who is in control of the weapon. Body-worn video at that point would have shown that Sergeant Daniels is fighting literally for his life. So he continues to fight to try to regain control of the weapon. Jeremiah has now joined in, and after about a 20-second fight for this weapon, Sergeant Daniels is able to finally get the weapon back under his control. He stands up, the weapon goes into his right hand, and he's immediately pulled back down. At that point, Nathaniel grabs Sergeant Daniels by the face and the ears and rips him backwards and puts him on his back, which immediately catapults Enoch and Jeremiah on top of him. Enoch is back in control of the weapon. Officer Hicks, who's off to the right a little bit, now sees this, and he takes his asp and he starts striking Jeremiah and David in the back. He strikes them multiple times, but they stay engaged in their physical altercation. Sergeant Daniels is then shot in the left leg. If I'd have had a body-worn camera on Sergeant Daniels, I'd have had a view of Enoch directly on top of my sergeant, in control of the weapon, refusing to comply, and then ultimately the shot being fired. At this point, Officer Hicks engages. As soon as he draws his weapon, David charges at Officer Hicks. Officer Hicks has no choice at that point but to fire on David. Officer Hicks turns his attention to Enoch directly over the top of Sergeant Daniels. Officer Hicks then delivers a fatal shot. If I had a body camera on Officer Hicks, you would see David attacking Officer Hicks when he draws his weapon, causing Officer Hicks to fire on David, striking him in the abdomen. You would also see that Enoch is on top of Sergeant Daniels. Enoch has a hold of the weapon. Sergeant Daniels, we would already know, has been shot, and Sergeant Daniels is fighting for the weapon. And that's why Officer Hicks had to discharge his weapon and ultimately fatally wound Enoch. The injuries that were sustained during this incident was one suspect dead, one suspect shot, one police officer shot, and 3 other officers with multiple contusions and broken bones. Having the 4RE is the first step at having a great video system. Without that video, everything changes in our investigation and in our world. But had I had body-worn Vista cameras, the questions that I had to wait to have answered until after the interviews, I would not have had to wait. I would have seen what happened and how Sergeant Daniels lost his handgun and what Officer Hicks was looking at when he had to make that fatal shot. Having the body-worn cameras would have answered all those questions that day for everybody involved.
I would say this is an extreme example. However, one never knows what tomorrow brings.
I just wanted to give an example of how the technology offers a different perspective of how that investigation would unfold with a camera and without a camera. So having a camera, having as much information as possible only would assist in the investigation.
In today's world, every Foxborough police officer should have a body camera. Personal opinion.
Agree. And it doesn't just have to be a violent encounter like this one, right, Mike? I mean,
no, and I didn't want, and I just wanted to, this one was really specifically designed about how the technology recreates the investigation, and they did a nice job. But yeah, no, they don't have to be situations of violence. And the trend is that you're seeing that when people are being notified that they're being recorded, it actually has a calming effect on the people you're engaging with. It kind of de-escalates it. It's a tool, and any tool we can use to de-escalate situations, I'll take all day.
Mike, can I ask a question? It's Brad Palter. How are you?
Good. How are you, sir?
It was great meeting you that night with Brian and Sharon. It's interesting, and I'm for this. And when I watched that video, the first thing that did come to mind, I think Larry mentioned it, at least asked about it. Wouldn't we think it'd be a good idea to have also dash cams with this? Because during that video, it showed them kind of coming up to that scene, at least that particular example. Would that only help having both, or is that just something in the budget you couldn't see trying to grab for both of those? I
agree with you 100%. But I mean, as Jack has made it highlighted, there's a cost, there's a trend, I kind of took a calculated risk meeting and suggesting this. I haven't even survived CIP yet, of the lesser, I would, sure, I could ask for everything, but I think I have to be fair to the other departments in town as well. There's a lot of need within the community, and I'm sure I'm always going to say mine's more important than someone else's. But yes, I agree that sure, combining the two and building that footage for the complete circle, absolutely would be better.
I think it would be a good idea at some point to give us an idea what that cost would be, because I have no idea. I think we have an idea what the body cams will be, but not with the dash. So that may help us too.
Yeah, I could, if I went digging, I could probably find it, but I don't want to be doing that while we're doing this.
Right.
There's always next year. You can come back for the second round.
Larry just gave the cue right there, huh?
I said if you get the body cam.
Well, all right. So that's where the in regards to the expense items, so then on the capital outlay, the cruisers staying with the model moving forward that we put together a couple of years ago. This year will be 4 cars again, not police cars. One of them, I oversee the ACO. Her vehicle is becoming a biohazard at this point. With it, there's been a lot of roadkill put in that thing, and so that's due for a replacement. That's a kind of vehicle that we can probably get at least 8 years out of. So that's one of the vehicles, and the other 3 are frontline Mark Cruisers. They'll be replacing cars, would have around 85,000 who will get moved to the detail line. And then the detail cars all have 95, 96, and 105,000 miles. Currently, I'm looking at a year to try to get a police car based on how slow Ford can produce one. So that's staying within the budget, what was allocated, with a 2.5% growth in that line item. I'll probably have to use some of my cruiser maintenance to kind of outfit the rest of the car, but I can make it work.
Hey, Chief, the Mark Cruisers are Ford Explorers, right?
Correct.
Okay.
We try to keep them all the same.
Yep.
We have to split the cost between the highway department for the, I don't know exactly the name, but we have to pay an annual fee to have all the codes from the manufacturer, kind of like a dealership.
Yeah.
So we don't want to venture in and buying a Chrysler one, a Ford one. It's honestly, it's like $5,000-6,000 a year. So
Agree.
we keep it all the same. Any other questions?
Go ahead, Tom.
Is there any significant differences in gas for a police SUV versus a police car cruiser?
I haven't broken it down, but the police cars are not all-wheel drive, and the amount of if I start mixing up the 2 cars, nothing will be interchangeable. The 2018, or I'm sorry, the 2020, they did change the frame a little bit, but the light bars, the roof sizes, everything would change, and they're really small. They really are small. We run patrol rifles, less lethal shotguns, and all the cruisers with storage areas with stop sticks. So the officers train a certain way. One thing under stress and in critical situations, you always resort back to your training. You resort the way you did things, sometimes as a kid in your life, but the officers train a certain way. And part of our use of force training is we simulate the cars, we simulate calls for service, and the officers showing up and how they have to get out of their car, what they're gonna need. So introducing a different car at this point, it just doesn't seem feasible. But I haven't broken down the gas mileage yet. So I could look into that. I could probably just pull it up in the manufacturer and find out what it is.
Hey, Chief,
Yes.
it's a really complete budget, and just wanted to say thanks for meeting with us. And I think it's impressive that you always return money, like last year, 122,000 back to the town. So I think that shows that you care about keeping things reasonable. So, I'm
So
in
just be,
favor.
so, yeah, so just be aware though, my police staff didn't take vacation time, so
Yep.
like they couldn't, there was nowhere to go, so we were allowed to carry, the town manager was allowed people to carry time over this year. So I lost the money, but I still owe the time. So just be aware with that. It wasn't like
Yep.
I ran things short just to give it back. There's
He's getting
hundreds
us
of
ready.
hours where no
He's
one
getting
took vacation time.
Getting us ready for next year, Larry. Getting us ready.
Chief, I know what you're saying. I think Brian is setting you up.
Yeah, I think so. I don't want to, I could see that coming a mile away.
Okay, go ahead, Tom. I know you have a question, and then we can move on.
Yeah,
Tom?
Chief, as you recall, last year we weren't you CIPing for 4 vehicles, and we thought about talking about making it 3 and 3 for the next 2 years. Is that what this is?
I don't believe we were going to go 3 and 3, were we?
That was part of the discussion. I can't remember exactly how it finished up. I don't have it right. Last year's right in front of me is how it finished up, but I remember that was part of the discussion, and that was played a part.
I would like to get to
3 cars now.
Tom, I would like to get to a point where I only have to ask for 3 cars, but it's based on the miles of the cars.
Right.
So if I can get there, and because if anybody knows, the police department was allocated 2 police cars a year.
Right.
And then it turned into, okay, where do we find some extra money? Every single year it was, how do we get this? And I honestly, we fell way behind. And your team, and the town manager, we found a way to like, all right, how many cars? What's the fleet? How many cars do we run? We run 2 officers per car. What's the number? So we finally got there. So as we reassess, because it's all based on, I couldn't go to a hourly model within the cars because some of them are so old, they didn't actually calculate the hours in the vehicles. Ultimately, I think that would be the way to go with some of these cars, because you could have a car that, so it depends on the drive. I got a new guy who comes in, and honestly, they'll rack up 23,000, 24,000 in a year. They just go. They just don't stop. And then another car could have 10 years. So it's all based on the sum of money that you gave, that I feel that I'm going to stay in that capital outlay group. I'm good right now. I feel at the end of the day, I hope that I can sit there and say, you know what, we're good. Our numbers match up, and we get a grant somewhere. We have a couple pending. We can offset. Then I don't ask for 3. I mean, I don't ask for 4, I ask for 3. But I'm not buying cars. I'm not getting rid of good cars just to buy them. I can tell you that right now.
Chief, just a question about the cruises themselves. That number seems really high to me. We were buying cruises like at under $30,000 just a short time ago. What's driving that number so much?
Well, the state bid number is, I think it's close to 36,000 for a Ford Explorer. And then we got to outfit the car. So we got to put the light bars in. We got to put all the extras. And that's where the manufacturers, and it's all off the state bid list. But the time these cars get done with frontline use and then detail use, we're not reusing that technology. It's not compatible. Currently, right now, I'm not going to say we have a smart cruiser, but we have a vehicle that adapts to the sunlight. So at nighttime, if you've ever driven and there's a police car with their lights on and it's so bright, you feel like that it's going to cause another accident. You can't see the police officer. You can't see the pedestrians. These light bars tone down at nighttime, so vehicles can pass by at a safe level. When officers exit out of the cars, certain lights on the car shut off, so someone in a vehicle doesn't see them exit their cars, and the system's all tied into one thing. And some of the costs, just the cages within the cars, all the accessories, the install. There's only about 2 vendors in the state that do them. MHQ up in Marlboro, and that's what they cost. I wish I could go to Target, go to Walmart, go to 6 different vendors and get the best deal, but this is it. This is where you got to go to get your car outfitted.
So,
I must be showing my age because I remember buying cruises when they were like 22, 23,000 bucks fully
You are.
outfitted.
I mean, I have all
Yeah.
the bids and all the prices on all the parts as they break it down. We have a whole profile built for each cruiser that we have. So every car is built identical. So there's
Yeah.
no guessing. And one thing we did roll into these cars is we never had a replacement plan for the computers in the car.
Right.
And what would happen is we'd show up and go, oh my God, they're all obsolete. They're $7,000. I need $80,000. So as they roll out, that's part of that cost that we built into it.
Okay. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Thank you. Thanks for explaining that. And just for everybody's understanding too, is like we've talked at length with the chief about the body cam ratio, and nobody is opposed to it. It's going to come down to a discussion about where the priorities are, what we can do right now, because it's about how much money we really have that we can spend right now. And I've told the chief that, you know, it may come down to a point where we're not able to support it at this town meeting, but maybe in the fall. It really depends upon where we stand with our, you know, funding. If we do get some extra money from the feds, which seems possible that we could see some additional money coming. Looks like the Congress is looking to act on the new stimulus bill by Friday or Saturday this week. If that happens, that you know, it depends upon how much you get back from that. But that could help the situation, and we'll take a look at that again. But it's going to come down to setting priorities, and that's why the purpose of the CIP process is. And so, you know, looking at everything in isolation is one thing, but I think looking at them collectively, we're going to have to determine, you know, which ones go in front of each one and see where it all lies. But yeah, nobody here is not supportive of his request, and we do see the value and how important it is. So I just want to be clear about that.
And that's just the full fleet, the miles, the cars, the blue, the frontline cars that move to the red, and the red are the ones that we send off to the boneyard. And they're so kind, they probably give us $600 a car when we give it to them, because there's nothing left. The bottom line is this has a $124,000 increase. Again, no CIP last year. I will be asking for $79,000 this year, and it meets all of the guidelines and expectations set forth. I do want to just, this is for you, Larry, but as about thinking forward as I start allocating the community's needs, and because I always think, and I know we can always do better, but the town has spent a lot of time and money doing different surveys under Ed O'Leary before Chief, and then before Ed O'Leary left, and then when Bill Baker came in, and these were pretty involved studies. And every one of these studies looked at the agency and looked at what we do as a police department, because we don't fit the mold of a regular community-based staffing off of population using a federal standard of either 1.9, 2.2, 2.5. We did independent studies about manpower hours and what we and where we spend it. Statistically speaking, we'll never be the safest community because of our NIBRS data, because the amount of calls for service and data that's generated having an NFL stadium that runs concerts. You can imagine that these at one point we were running 34 events up there, and Patriot Place, we generate a lot of data, statistical data. And all of that data and all of that requires follow-up, investigation, and planning. So every single study has said that we don't have enough bodies to get it done. We're squeaking by, but we're not really at our full potential. And as the chief, there's more that I need to give this town, just thinking forward. We all live here. We see what's going on. Statistically, our calls for service, I mean, I didn't break it down, but when you're running 24,000 calls for services, we run, 28, 29 overdoses. We had 5 deaths this year, many of those in our hotels. there is crime. We're working at it. Traffic this year has been diminished because of COVID. But prior to COVID, every single road in this town probably had a complaint about speeders and travel and 95 failing. And that needs attention. We run 2 full school districts. I need 2 SROs to handle these calls for services. Right now, I'm stealing here and I'm taking from here to get it done. We have, as an agency, we have pushed out. Sergeant Collins has taken on a community outreach with our seniors in our social media, our Instagram, Twitter accounts. Our online page is able to request accident reports online. We're able to do reports, request reports, and our LTC requests are through the roof. We're in the hundreds this particular year, which every single one of those LTCs requires a full background investigation, which is a Corey check, triple I check, and it's involved, and we got hundreds of them. I can give you the number. I think it's 346. And at this point, it's probably taking up administratively a day and a half every single week of our staff. So I know we run a budget, what's a line item budget based on cost, but I also have a program budget essentially about where my man hours go and how we're investigating things and making sure that we're following up. And we're seeing the change. We're seeing the calls, the need for mental health crises. We're seeing the need to have resources. Even today, I mean, I'm not going to give the details, but we get a call for a mental health crisis with a child. Okay, the situation involved the primary care. The primary care said call the police. We become the dumping ground of every situation requires the police, and we're going to need some help with some of these, especially with some of the policing models and the prosecution not moving forward and not being charged criminally. So I just want to put that on the radar, Tom. So this one I do remember for next year. So if we say we talked about it, someone take a screenshot and quote me on it. But otherwise,
Chief Grace, I got a question about that. Last year we had a bunch of questions about overtime. There was a ton of it because you had, resources tied up in other areas and everything. And here you're talking about, these, studies show that you're understaffed. And I just kind of want to bring it back to something you mentioned last year. Are resources available? Like, are there more people coming out of the academy now? Are you paying more to bring people from other departments?
I can tell you, like the turnover, I don't lose police officers because I have an agency that is where people don't want to work. I think we've had one person leave. I won't, but they became a firefighter. I can't compete with that with 7 days off a year, only working 7 days a month. But the state police are going to offer an academy. I could lose a couple. Right now, with the police reform and the MPTC, they haven't even set forth the guidelines for an academy yet. So we don't even have potentially a place to send them because the police reform hasn't set the new agenda for the training. So yes, it becomes a challenge in regards to the hiring of actually getting them on the road. It's about a year and a half, depending when you hire them. So you end up with those gaps for sure. It's never a situation where I can't get a police officer. The question is, how long is it going to take? That becomes the problem. And when you say there's a ton of the overtime is all designated to making sure that we have 4 cops on the road every single day.
I understand that. That was last year's issue, but I just remember that's why it was brought up last year. So I just wanted to see if, I remember last year, we had to talk about, well, it's hard to get people that, are interested in becoming law enforcement officers. And if you thought that had changed at all.
Oh, if you're talking about the profession in general, absolutely. I mean, when I took the civil service test, there was 37,000 people. Right now, my list in Foxborough is running at about 15. There used to be 49, 79, 100 on that list. Has the profession changed? Yes. Is it something people are striving to go into? Not as much. Are they really willing to go out there and endure so many different criticisms from so many different levels? I see it's a change. But at the same time, maybe the ones who do choose are the ones who should be the ones taking the job and being, because it's such a noble profession. Serving your community is nothing better. There's still a pool of very, very bright young men and women who can offer their services. And I have many of them right now. They're fantastic. So I think that's about all I have. I probably, again, gone over my limit, and we can blame Larry as the chairman for not shutting me down.
Chief, let me tell you something. I think you owe Mike Kelleher lunch, dinner, and a bunch of stuff. You're going to hear from him tomorrow. So I'm just
All right,
giving you
deal.
a heads up right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.
But anyway, thank you, Chief, for a great presentation. It was very informative, very detailed as usual. And if we have any questions, we know where to find you.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank
Nice
you.
job, Chief. Nice job.
Okay. Good night, Bill.
Good night.
Okay, I guess we saved the best for last. Now it's the fire chief, Mike Kelleher. You're up.
All right, thank you. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just going to run through kind of a quick year in review of 2020. And, my budget's pretty straightforward this year. There's not a lot of changes, so we can get into that, and then I'll answer any questions you have. So just some success we've had in the last couple of years with grants and other operational enhancements. One thing that we really have had a lot of success with is our point of care ultrasound program that we've deployed in the ambulance. About 2 years ago, we had a pretty significant accident last night on Route 1, and we utilized the ultrasound. There was unfortunately a fatality in the motor vehicle accident, but the female occupant of the second car was entrapped after we got her out of the vehicle. We were able to scan her and actually see that she had a significant amount of blood in her abdomen. We were able to detect that it was coming from her liver. And they were also able to see that she had some free floating blood around her heart, which also was a significant injury that would raise us to have an index of suspicion that she's going to need an operating room rather quickly. We called a medical helicopter. She was transported and delivered into surgery. So we're always continuing to try to raise the bar here. And that was just another example of the success we've had. So this is how I started off my 2020. This was the biggest problem I had, was how I'm going to stop the rail car fires. So it's pretty good problem to have considering what laid ahead. So this was January 2020. It was about 4 a.m. during a snowstorm, and it was about minus 20 degrees out. So that's how I started, and I would have done one of those every week compared to COVID. So little did I know COVID was going to hit. It had a pretty significant impact on my department. A lot of unknowns. A lot of anxiety around being able to keep this PPE supply chain coming. We had a lot of interesting discussions, but I just have to give my department credit. They really stepped up. Everybody was here every day. We're a 24/7 operation, and these men and women met the challenges with grace and tenacity. So we were called by the state probably late March, early April, to help set up a COVID test site, originally for first responders, that morphed into a test site for, grocery clerks and other frontline people. But this was a collaborative effort between multiple agencies: state police, state fire marshal's office, private ambulance companies, the National Guard, my staff. So it was very interesting, very, it was a great learning process. It was a great exercise in interagency collaboration and cooperation, and it was very successful. Had a lot of challenges with weather, challenges with the environment, but it was really a great effort. Something, again, going from railcar incidents to that, it was pretty interesting. This is the governor visiting the site early on as it opened up. And then the routine stuff still continued. This was a trash truck that caught on fire down off of Chestnut Street as we came into the summertime. So we went, again, it went from, COVID, but the routine stuff really never stopped. July, we had the Norwood Hospital flood, which still today has a pretty significant impact on our operation here in the fire department. Completely wiped out Norwood Hospital, destroyed the emergency room, destroyed all the switch gear and all the infrastructure that's on the basement level of that hospital. Still is not open today. We still have really no indication as to when or if it is ever going to open up. So that took out our primary hospital where we get all of our medical control from. We had pharmacy agreements that had to be rewritten and everything because the entire hospital was destroyed. An update that I have heard recently is that it's still an insurance subrogation. They're still trying to figure out who's going to pay for what. So the odds of this hospital opening back up in the near future, if at all, is probably pretty remote. So we went right from that to COVID. So we were initially, that's Tom Kenvin on your screen there. We were able to get in-house point of care COVID testing, which was pretty remarkable. It kept us out of a lot of trouble as we came into the fall here through the summer. We're able to test town employees, keep people online, keep firefighters and paramedics staffing our equipment, because if someone had allergies or a cold or, a police officer came in, may have not been feeling well, we're able to test them right away and see if they were able to, continue, or if they did in fact have COVID, they were immediately sent to quarantine and we prevented them from coming in the building. So this was a really remarkable tool to have. We purchased it with some COVID money we got from the Executive Office of Public Safety. Again, would be remiss if I didn't mention our many community partners throughout the whole COVID spring and summer. Members of the community dropping off PPE. Ocean State Job Lot was dropping off tons of PPE. People were making us masks and shields. Dunkin' Donuts, Frank Varunas donated coffee and donuts to that COVID test site at Gillette Stadium every day for over 90 days. Free of charge, all donated. So we got him a governor's citation for his efforts during that time. So that was again, the community really stepped up and rallied around us. So we went from COVID testing to the vaccinations. So late in December, we were able to get the vaccine. We started to roll that out, initially to our members and the police. And then just recently, we were able to acquire additional vaccine and offer it to our elderly population, our vulnerable populations. We actually were able to take the show on the road. In the first day that the elderly were eligible, we went down to Carolina Court and Centennial Court. We were able to deliver vaccines to people who weren't able to get out and get to the senior center or get to Gillette to get the vaccine. So we brought the vaccine to them. I'm proud of the efforts that the department brought, and it was very well received within that community. So. All but one of my staff got the vaccine, so that's another a huge compliment to the staff and the working relationship we have and the trust that exists between labor and management here in this department. We were able to get 99% of the people here vaccinated, so it was just a really good partnership we have. And then we really got some good news late November. We were designated by the Insurance Service Office as a Class 1 fire department. We are one of 6 in the state that have this designation. That's a combination of your water system, your communication system, and your fire department. So 15% of the score is your communications, and we were able to max out on our communication score by switching to SEMREC and having their technology and their protocols in place. 35% was the water department. So I think you're seeing the benefit of all of the capital projects and the water infrastructure over the last 5 to 10 years, and the continued maintenance with Chris Gallagher and his staff. And then 50% was our department, our record keeping, our training, our apparatus maintenance, and keeping track of everything. And a lot of this has to do with us going through the accreditation process, and the records and the exercises we go through as part of that really put us in line to get this designation. So we're very, very happy, very proud of that. So, yep, just 2020, you know, a lot of strange things happened this year. It was you know, it was a busy year. The fires continued, the medical calls continued. You know, on the upper left, you'll see that was a truck carrying explosives crashed one morning on 95 in early June. We're still in the midst of all the COVID stuff. That's just, you know, an example of one of those odd things that happened. The lower right is that's a mill fire in Norton. We sent an engine and a ladder truck over to help them out. So that was good. I ended up, you know, being the acting health director towards the end of 2020 as Pauline Clifford retired. So you know, Mr. Keegan had asked that I able to lend a hand and help manage that department. And I was able to do that. So the start of 2020 to the end, it was not the way I saw it going. Just a little history. I know we have some new members on the AdCom, so I just give you a quick rundown of my staff personnel and what their functions are. Obviously, I'm the chief of the department. You know, I'm responsible for all aspects of the operation: budgeting, staffing, directing. I have an assistant chief, which is equivalent of the police department's deputy chief. The nomenclature is a little different, but the functions are fairly similar. My assistant chief is responsible for operations, Tom Buckley. He also handles a lot of the Gillette Stadium issues that we have with staffing, with meetings, with permitting. He handles a lot of our human resources. He's a frontline person in human resources and in those issues. And then he also helps with the policy implementation. Our Deputy Chief of Emergency Medical Service, who's also our public health nurse. This was a collaborative effort. If people don't remember, last year we were able to pull the public health nursing function, which was contracted prior to last year. We pulled that into the fire department, created a hybrid. This individual is in charge of the emergency medical services and all of our paramedics here in town, and is also responsible for the public health functions. So the infectious disease investigations that are required by public health. But I will tell you that this position paid huge dividends as we went through the COVID crisis. To have the synergy of public health and emergency medical services under one roof, all pulling in the same direction, it was remarkable. And then there were a lot of communities that were very envious of Foxborough as we went forward. We were able to do a lot of things, and we were ahead of the curve, like being able to issue vaccines on the day that the elderly, the 75 plus population was eligible. You know, that morning at 0800 hours, we were administering vaccines the day they were eligible. That's for all the legwork that this individual did to get us to be in that position prior to COVID even starting. I have a Deputy Chief, Dave Larissy. He's in charge of all the fire prevention from town. He's the equivalent of what would be like the town's fire marshal. He's responsible for all the code enforcement. He's our fire investigator. He does public education outreach and community risk reduction. He issues all the permits and performs all those functions. And then this is just kind of the spheres of Gillette Stadium and how they overlap and what we're responsible for. So obviously during events, there's a lot of emergency operations. We have a lot of, a lot of things happening up there. Anytime you put 68 or 70,000 people in the same place, you're going to have issues that pop up, and that's what we're responsible for. So we handle all the fire and EMS related issues around emergency operations. We also staff the medical room. So some of the less critical or the less acute medical calls are handled in the first aid rooms by our frontline paramedics, along with people from Brigham and Women's Hospital and a private ambulance company, Fallon Ambulance. So, we staff that. So that's anything from handing out sunscreen and Tylenol to, going out and getting somebody that might have happened to, have an acute medical condition. We're also responsible for all the fire prevention. As you're aware, there's a lot of pyrotechnics and propane special effects that occur at the stadium. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on in the background to permit that, inspect it. There's meetings, there's demonstrations, there's walkthroughs. So it's not just the day of the event. There's a lot of things leading up, and then there's also things post, and then obviously the planning. So we different things. We have a routine for soccer and football, but different concerts have different needs. Different events have different special effects. There's different players that come in because there's different venues, different acts, different contractors. Like for instance, the Ramstein concert that's planned for Labor Day, they canceled it last Labor Day. Very, very, very pyrotechnic centric. So they have a lot of permits that need to be done. There's a lot of due diligence that we need to do to protect the public when an act like that comes in. So because that, that liability all falls on us because we issue those permits. So that's kind of Gillette Stadium. The day-to-day operations of the Foxborough Fire Department. So we have 8 personnel per shift. So as you can see, we spread those 8 people across 4 pieces of apparatus. We staff a primary ambulance all the time with 2 firefighter paramedics. We have a ladder truck that's staffed with a captain and a firefighter paramedic. And then we have an engine company that's staffed with a lieutenant and a firefighter. And then we have 2 people that act as our swing people. So they can, if we have a fire, they can staff a fire engine. If we have a second medical, which happens all the time, mostly they're on the second ambulance, but they're not dedicated staff. So these people shift around. If we have a brush fire, they'll take a brush truck. But what I want to point out with this slide and demonstrate is that there's no fat here. We have no extra. So if one person's out, how we operate is we budget the knowns. So we have vacation, we have personal leave. So and we have some training time. So if somebody takes a day off for one of those reasons, we fill them with overtime. If somebody is sick, someone has a long-term injury, any of those other unknowns that we don't budget for, that something doesn't get staffed, and that's what I wanted to demonstrate. So there's absolutely no fat, there's no extra, there's no impact people. It's just it is what it is, and this is the staffing that we try to cover all bases. So we balance the need of providing fire protection and emergency medical services and try to take care of everything. But as you can see, this is one thing I wanted to highlight. So we got with SEMREC 2 years ago. We became a member of SEMREC with these 4 towns. It was agreed upon that the 4 towns are fairly similar in operation and size. But as you can see from this slide, so in 2021 we have apples to apples comparisons of our run volumes. So you can see that since January 1st, these are 911 calls and fire alarms. There's no, there's no deviation as far as what's measured. So when we measure ourselves for the first 2 months of all 4 towns being together, you'll see that we're the busiest town. So we have the lowest population, but yet we're the busiest town, and that's fact. So there's no, like I said, there's no games being played. There's no runs that aren't runs. These are 911 calls and fire alarms and car accidents and things like that. So we have the leanest staff. So we run 8. Mansfield runs 9 with 2 stations. Norton runs 10 with 2 stations, or Norton's authorized for 10 firefighters per shift. You can see we're almost 100 calls ahead of Norton so far this year. And then Easton is also 10. They have 3 stations. They have about 10,000 more people than us. So that's pretty significant, I think, and it's pretty telling about how we operate, and I think we're about as efficient as we could possibly be in terms of our deployment strategy and our ability to cover calls. So one thing that happened to us is that
Mike, is this slide January and February of this year? Is that
I pulled
data?
Yeah, I pulled these numbers this morning. So
okay, all right.
Mansfield, Norton and Easton came on in December of last year. So they've only been with us for a month. So I wanted to take a snapshot of the first 2 months of us together. So that we didn't have this data before. So it's new data, but yeah, this is fresh. I pulled this afternoon as I was putting this together. So one of the things, like I said, the big impact that we've had is Norwood Hospital's closing. So Norwood was our main hospital. We went there 84% of the time. It's an average of 10 to 12 miles per run. We could turn around typically in 90 minutes, oftentimes, depending on the severity of the call and the drug replacement that the paramedics had, it might be anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. As you can see now, with Norwood gone, most of our calls are to Sturdy. It's about 12 miles, a little longer, but we're also going to Good Samaritan, Faulkner Hospital, Brigham and Women's Hospital, Beth Israel Deaconess, and Newton Wellesley. Those are our top ones. And you can see they just, as you go out mileage wise, Faulkner's twice as far as Norwood Hospital mileage wise. So our guys are going further. They're out of service longer because of the travel time. We we scrambled to get agreements with some of these hospitals so we could replace some of our medications and things like that. Because, you know, we don't stock a full pharmacy here. So we have access to the pharmacy through our hospital. So we had to get new agreements. It was really it was kind of a burden. The month of July was a real scramble to get those agreements in place and figure out, you know, at the time we didn't know how long NOAA was going to be closed. So, you know, as time went on, we were able to figure a lot of that out, but we would try to steer people to go as close, you know, to a hospital. It depends on the medical conditions, and there's a lot of variables that go into the decision to transport into Boston as opposed to going to Norwood. But now that decision's kind of been removed for us. So if we're gonna go that way, go north, then it's, you know, typically, like I said, Brigham and Women's or Faulkner Hospital. Good Samaritan Brockton is another place that we go to a lot. So.
Like, if I could just interject for 1 second here, this is not an issue that's going to go away anytime soon either, right? Mike is 100% correct that this is not an easy fix. Norwood Hospital, I've been working with the Norfolk County managers to try and build support for the director of Norwood Hospital, who's been working with the insurance companies to try and come up with a solution to the insurance claim that's going on, ongoing insurance claim that's there right now with for the hospital to rebuild the hospital. And that's not, they do have the right zoning in place now to help help rebuild the hospital, but you're literally a couple of years away at least before you'll see that facility reopen. And who knows what the actual facility will look like. Will it be the same type of hospital that they currently had, or they had within the past year, or will it be a downsized version of that that will not provide us the full level of services that we were used to seeing prior to the storm that occurred in Norwood?
I have a question for Mike on the slide that he's got on the screen. The number of runs versus population. Would that also reflect the number of miles of interstate highways, where we have probably more interstate miles or plus Route 1 than, for example, a Mansfield or Norton or Easton?
Yeah, I think when people think of Foxborough, they think of when they do correlations of public safety, and Chief Grace alluded to this as well. There's no correlation between population and call volume. It's driven by things like you just mentioned. It's driven by highways, because at any given time, how many people are on the highways on 495 and 95? I think people forget a lot about that. 495 is also part of our responsibility. So the state police the Foxborough police don't respond to 495. The Foxborough Highway Department doesn't have to plow 495, but the Foxborough Fire Department still has to go out there and take care of car crashes, roadside fires, hazardous material spills when trucks, diesel tanks leak or, something rolls over. So that's all still under our jurisdiction and our responsibility. So I never understood why the state didn't fund some of the fire departments. I might file a bill, actually. That's a good idea. But yeah, I don't understand, that's still all part of our jurisdiction. We're still responsible to respond out there. But yeah, like Chief Grace also said, we have 9 hotels. So at any given time, that population isn't a reflection of what is actually, in the community. You think about some of the bars at Patriot Place, like that country music bar. I think that has a 1,200 person occupancy. And that's pretty significant. That's almost 10% of our population right there. So the population and the drivers for public safety are, they're disassociated. There isn't a correlation between the number of people that live here and then, your drive on public safety. So I think, does that answer your question?
What it almost says is that Bill should be talking to our local rep and senator to see whether that can be. You made the off-the-cuff suggestion of why doesn't the state pony up a little bit of money to support the effort on the interstate highways? Maybe that should be the case. Maybe that's something that Bill should be looking at.
It's an interesting thought, Jack, and I know that the immediate answer is going to be, look, well, they don't have enough money to run their own operation now, so they're not going to share it with us. But you're right. I mean, it's not just a Foxborough problem. I'm sure it's a problem for fire departments in many jurisdictions around Massachusetts that are close to highways. And it'd be interesting to see, Mike, if statistically you can come up with the number of actual responses that you've had during the past, say, 5 years, just on 495 and 95, to see how much of an impact it actually has. That sort of puts it in more perspective as to how much of an impact that occurs in your department.
Yeah, I know one of the issues we have with 495 is that it takes us quite a while to get out there.
Right.
And it's not necessarily the calls, it's the time, it's the response time out there, and then the time you're tied up, and then you're on a limited access highway. So it's not like
Right.
if we're on Comcast Street and we're clearing a fire alarm call, and all of a sudden a medical call comes in or a car accident comes in, we can fly right there. You shoot down Oak Street or whatever. But when you're on 495, you have to go right up to 95, jump on 95 north, get off at 140 and come back into town. So it can be challenging sometimes, especially with inclement weather. I do have some of that data, and some of it can be pretty interesting.
Yep.
As a long-term solution, is it possible to have a utility entrance and exit at the intersection of South Street and 495?
Potentially. We'll look at that, certainly. So looking at the part of our funding mechanism is the ambulance and the receipts generated by transporting people to the hospital. And this is a look over year, a fiscal year, of what the offset is to the fire department's budget, both salary and operating budget. And that is a direct result of the ambulance transports that the money does. It goes into a overlay reserve account, and then it's reallocated into the budget the next year. So I think it's 30 to 35% of the total budget is funded through ambulance receipts. So it's off the back of the taxpayer. So my budget summary for this year, overall, we're up 6.64%. So some of that's contractual obligations, but the huge driver on that is that we had a grant for the last 4 years that funded firefighter positions. It funded three firefighter positions. The town had to fund one. That was part of the deal, and that is now over as of around October of next fiscal year, and that's the big driver really of what the increase is to that budget. So I put in for absolute bare minimal expenses. I was 0.5%, I think, or 0.75% or something. It was just the absolute bare minimum. I really tried hard to keep the budget down. I understand the impact, and I understand COVID and that, the effects of the, the different funding mechanisms and the strain on the budget. So capital outlay, I just, again, bare minimum, personal protective equipment. And then we're on the last leg of our accreditation process, and we've been working with a consultant to help us do that. We're on track to be the first municipal fire department in Massachusetts to be accredited. And I think a lot of the credit of getting the Class 1 designation goes to us going through the accreditation process and working with those consultants. So 92% of our budget is salary, 8% is expense. And so that's where we're at.
Hey, Mike, can you detail for the crew here the amount of the SAFER grant, how much we were originally awarded, and then can you also detail what we all talked about, which is if you don't fulfill the commitment of that grant, we're obligated to repay some of it or a portion of?
Yeah, so we were awarded $1.2 million 4 years ago to hire for the 4 firefighter paramedic positions to bring us to the 8 people a shift. So at the time, the selectmen in the town all agreed that was a direction they wanted to go in, and it was a good thing, and that they were going to pick up the grant. If we don't fund those positions October 1st, I think we have funding till October 1st. So if we don't fund those positions next fiscal year, we would be in violation of the grant, and we would have to pay back that money. So October 1st is the deadline. After October 1st, we're in the clear. We have no obligation to the federal government, but October 1st is the date that we're obligated to maintain those positions and continue to fund them.
Yep. I mean, I think you and the team did a lot of work to get that amount of money, which is pretty substantial. So, it's obvious that we want to continue to, realize whatever benefit we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Mike, Dennis Keefe. How bad was your department hit by COVID? I noticed your sick coverage year to date is gone up very significantly. Is that COVID related? And
yeah,
perspective on that.
Yeah, we had we survived the spring and summer. We were doing really, really well. And then around the end of September, early October, we got hit with a couple of cases of COVID, and it's very difficult for our operation. We're 24/7, but we live on top of each other, and they're in the rigs together. They're going to calls together, and as much vigilance and as much of the nagging that I did of the masks and the social distancing, it's very hard. The reality of that is very difficult. So when one guy got it, 3 guys got it. And at one point we ended up with 11 people either quarantining or infected, and we lost basically an entire 8-man shift plus 3. So we had to, so we were pretty diligent in our planning. When this thing first hit, we were on top of it pretty good. So back in March, right before everything shut down, we had a meeting with all the officers. So the shift commander of every shift and all my staff, we kind of laid out a plan. And one of the things we said is if we lose more than 25% of the department of COVID, we were going to pivot to a 56-hour work week, which is a 3-platoon system instead of the typical 4-platoon system we work. Unfortunately, that costs a lot in overtime. We did that for 5 or 6 weeks. The guys worked 48 hours straight and then had 96 hours off. So that was the shift. We wanted to minimize people passing. At shift change. So they worked a 48-hour period straight, and then they would change shifts. So it was effective. We were able to mitigate the outbreak, and that was a bulk of that cost. We had another smaller outbreak. We lost maybe 3 or 4 people a couple of weeks later, all external. They were external exposures, but once one guy got it, they cleared it. So that's what. The good news on that overage, though, a bulk of that was covered by the CARES Act, and we were able to get money from FEMA to cover that. So I'm pretty sure we actually got that money covered. So I don't think that's going to be an impact to the budget.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have a question that's it's very similar to the one I asked Mike Grace earlier. By the way, I have great respect for both the fire and police department, but like the police department, I'm concerned about the long-term cost increase. It shows for this year 7.5% salary increase, and there's a reason for it. But the reality is it's 8% a year for the last 3 years. And so that's an unsustainable model. And I'm not sure where the answer is. And, it's not like I'm saying anyone sitting down on the job, you're not. But somehow we've got to find an answer to the spiraling costs of our staffing.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think one of the increases we had last year was bringing that public health nurse. So it wasn't so much as an increase. Some of that was a shift. So we took $40,000 that we used for a contract for the public health nurse, put it into my budget, and then we were eligible for additional Medicaid funding from the state that we never took advantage of because it's a lot of paperwork and we didn't have the systems to collect the data. That came available. We were able to apply for that funding, so that funding came in. But that comes in as a receipt, but it shows on the budget as an increase. So some of that is not the tax dollar. That is other revenue or cost shifting. So it's not it certainly has gone up, but it might not be the 8% that you noticed.
I think the other thing, if I could just add to that, Mike, Chief and Jack, is that, you know, they did add the three firefighters into the mix. You know, that occurred during those past 3 years, and so that increased their staffing level. So, you know, both departments have had, you know, staffing level increases during the period of time that you just looked at. So I do think that explains a lot of the differences in terms of why the numbers went up. I don't know that we're going to see significant changes over the next few years because, first of all, we're going to have to wait and see how the impacts continue to roll forward. But we're going to be in a situation right now. We're going to have to probably stand pat for a little while and then see where things go. But I do think, you know, the challenge has been, you can see by the statistics on both sides, both fire and police, that the number of runs and the number of responses that both public safety operations are making are significantly high. And I don't know how we're going to handle that going forward. But you know, one thing that went back to the situation that Chief Grace talked about in terms of his study that was done, was that we may be studying, we may think of how to look at some of the, if we can civilianize some of the impacts on the operations on both sides, because we really want to make sure that we're putting firefighters where they belong and response and emergency response people where they belong, as opposed to be doing administrative tasks whenever possible. So that's something that we need to look at. I don't know that, you know, that's a widely popular approach to go to, but some of it does make sense to me in terms of how we're spending our time on the administrative end of things, and just takes away from what these guys do really well, and that is to, you know, to take care of the emergency responses of our community.
Yeah, the other thing too is that we're always looking for opportunities to collaborate with our partners. I think, you know, I was a big part of SEMREC coming to Foxborough. I worked hard, and it was a tremendous opportunity for me. And you really got to work with other communities and really see that everybody's kind of in the same boat. So it gave us an opportunity to look at other avenues to collaborate. And one of the things that we have here that we're fortunate is we have a pretty good mechanic. He's very very highly qualified. He's got all the certifications of what, you know, an app mechanic in the fire service is. It's very rare. So one thing we started doing is sharing our mechanic with Norfolk and Rentham. They actually pay the town of Foxborough to have our mechanic work on their apparatus. It was something I presented to the selectmen. They were in favor of it. And, you know, we're not going to make $1 million, but we're offsetting, you know, as we go forward, we're offsetting our, our own maintenance costs as they climb. So you can see you can see that you got a 0.5% increase in expenses that, you know, hoping to make some of that up with some of this, the revenue on the other end that, you know, kind of spread the wealth around, and other departments, you know, will have the opportunity to grow as well. So.
Hey, Tom, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. It probably goes to Bill just as much as Michael, but the being ranked in that top level, number one level as a fire department here, does that matriculate into any kind of savings on town insurance? And also for Bill and for Michael, does it also elevate your standing when you're applying does it open any more grants availability for the town to qualify for?
It doesn't.
Go ahead, Mike. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
It doesn't open up. I think it makes us, it puts us in a position where we're recognized for our efforts, that we're an organized and effective fire department. I think it certainly looks good on any grant application. As far as the savings, I probably actually undersold myself. It's not just town insurance; it's insurance townwide. I think the businesses actually are the biggest benefactor of this increase in rating. From what I understand, so between a 5% and a 7% savings on your insurance premium when they reevaluate your policy. So this doesn't go into effect until March 1st, this rating, but that's what I'm told. So especially the businesses that have the large businesses like Gillette, like Schneider, they have huge insurance policies. So a 5-7% swing it might only be $60 for you and I, but for
Not with Amika.
some of the some of the bigger organizations in town, some of the bigger business could stand to save them a substantial amount of money. So that's, there's very few things I can do as the fire chief to give a direct savings to the town like that. And this was one of those things. That's why we were, you'll see it on the trucks and stuff. We're pretty proud of it because it sets us apart from above the rest, but it also delivers a value to our taxpayer in terms of actual money. That's actual dollars saved. And there's not, like I said, there's not a lot I can do in my position as fire chief to do that, to deliver a direct savings to the taxpayer.
Yeah. So Bill, coming around on Michael's answer there, saying it doesn't start until March 1st, would we see potentially any savings in this fiscal year, 2020, 2021, or would it all be rolled over into 2022?
For insurance, Tom?
Yeah.
No, so we actually, I'm going to try and give you as good an answer as I can here, because I actually, in one of my other responsibilities, I serve on the Maya Board of Directors, and we actually look at where insurance is going statewide and countrywide. And unfortunately, this year you're seeing on a nationwide level, the cost of property insurance is climbing rather significantly, and that's a lot to do with with changing climate change and some of the things that are occurring in the environment that's really having an impact on property and how it's affecting the property values, and especially you see stuff along the coast, you see stuff internally, but you see some pretty bad storms. Look at Texas right now, major situations that are changing and evolving. So that's having an impact on the market as a whole. The fact that we came into a situation with the fire department, meaning, and it really is due to the credit of all the people in that department, is that they worked really hard to put themselves in that position at the precisely right time for us to offset some of the impact of that to the community as a whole and the businesses as a whole. As luck would have it this year, Tom, I mean, I don't know if you were at the last meeting where I said this, but our actual cost of our insurance is going down by about $230,000 next year into Foxborough. Most of that, though, is related to workers' comp savings. But I will say to you, though, that our property costs have actually stabilized as well. So we're better than most in that respect. But I do think we're going to see most of that savings in next fiscal year, not this fiscal year. I think Dennis is up, Larry.
Yeah, Mike, I was impressed with your brief overview of your point of care testing program. Have you found that to be really positive in reducing the virus transmission within your department, and are other departments taking advantage of what you have to offer there?
Yeah, so it saved our rear end a few times, to be honest with you, to be able to have somebody come in, test them, and know whether they're positive or not. It was a tremendous. It's tremendously powerful as a manager to be able to know that information, because you're not guessing, you're not sending a bunch of people home because someone's got allergies. You know what I mean? So on both ends, I think It saved us financially. It saved us manpower wise. Same thing with the police, schools. So it became so successful that we had a little bit of that COVID grant money left over, and we purchased one for the school department. So the school department actually has the same machine. We gave it to nurses. They were able to use it. Same thing to keep people online, keep people coming to work. That was the idea, and it was a tremendously powerful tool. It was really good.
What instrument are you using?
It's called the Abbott ID Now. It's the molecular PCR test. It's a benchtop molecular PCR test. So it's the gold standard of testing, but it's the same one that Walgreens and CVS use. So,
Mr. Chairman, to add to that point, Dennis, is that Foxborough is one of the few towns in this part of the state rather that's open. Our entire operation is open with very few exceptions in terms of our operations. The reason we were able to do that was because the fire department was able to test a lot of people so that we could stay on top of that. And when the situation emerged, we were able to address it pretty quickly. So there's definitely a spillover effect onto a lot of different operations because of it.
Right. Good. Thank you.
Any further questions for Chief? If not, Mike, you want to move on to the public safety building?
I think, so I'm still stuck with this budget. So this is the public safety building. I work with Tony from the school department or the building department. He's in charge of all the town buildings. We still have a separate budget for the joint public safety building. A vast majority of that is the custodian salary. And then the expenses to run the building, the paper towels and the cleaning supplies and, salt for the sidewalks. So that's all this, year over year, we occasionally have some capital outlay expenses. This year, we don't have any. There was nothing that was brought forward to the, for the building. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. It's pretty straightforward.
Mike, I know on the CIP request, you were looking for the foundation for the, I guess, the service bay. Is that still?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep asking for that.
I know it was on last year and then it got taken off. So I remembered looking at the cracks. So
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it'll survive this year, but I think each year it gets worse and it's going to be more expensive when we finally have to bite the bullet on that one.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I plan on presenting that again.
Any questions on public safety building for Mike? I think, Mike, you've done a good job. It's a good presentation, very detailed. We have the information we were looking for.
Great.
If you have any questions, we know where to find you. And I just want to thank you for coming.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mike.
I try
Thanks,
to keep
Chief.
it brief, so.
Great job.
All right, thank you.
Mike, and enjoy your dinner tomorrow night.
Oh, yeah. I I should be thinking.
I think he's gonna buy breakfast, lunch, and dinner for you.
I know. At this rate, you might get it for a whole week.
I think we all might be eating breakfast pretty soon if we don't finish up soon.
Sure.
All right, nice job, Mike. Nice job.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess we'll move quickly to housekeeping. Since we have you, Bill, do you want to give the committee just a quick update on what you told me about the town meetings and the changes and the warrant articles? Bill, you're on mute.
So one of these days I'll figure this out. So, all right. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is brand new information. So I haven't even told the full board yet. So but the good news is that it looks like we don't necessarily have to have a special town meeting within the annual. I had a conversation with with town council as well as the moderator, and the good news is that the 4 articles that we currently have are actually things we can actually act on during the annual. So we may have to reopen the annual warrant to slot those in, but it looks like we don't have to hold a special meeting within the annual to do that. So that's good news. And so you'll have 4 new articles added to the list that we had, but 3 of them are collective bargaining agreements, 1-year agreements that we were supposed to act on in the fall, but we'll take up now at the annual. And then and it's possible, depending upon how successful we are at the table for agreements for next fiscal year, and Mike Johns I see he's on as well right now, we can actually, it's possible that we may not have every one of those agreements are ready and for prime time by the time we get to town meeting for that. So you may get some agreements swap out, so the net number might be close to being the same in the end anyways. There was an amendment that we have to do to an existing article. So it doesn't look like we have to add an we just amend an existing article that we currently have on the warrant for the annual, which is for revolving funds. So we're going to add to that particular article. And so that adds 2 new funds into that. So we'll see how that plays out, and I think we'll be in good shape. All right, so that's good news. The good news to report on that front.
It is. Thanks, Bill.
Okay.
So having said that, I just wanna just discuss with the committee. Last weekend, I sent out the assignment for the warrant articles. So if you're comfortable with what was suggested, we'll just leave it. If not, you can speak up now, whichever one you don't want. Okay, I think everybody's comfortable, so that's good. And then moving along, Bill is gonna coordinate the presentation of all the warrant articles to AdCom. So, there is a Board of Selectmen meeting next week where everything will be finalized. So we'll give him the extra week. So my take is that we start hearing the presentation on March 10 and March 17. And then if we need to, we'll have it on March 24th. And then after the 3 hearings, we need to start deliberating and take a vote on it. Okay, so Brad, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. I think just because I haven't done this before, can you briefly say what do we need to do, preparing for this, or me individually particularly?
Yes, I sent everyone the draft write-up for last year. So basically what you have to do is the sample write-up is given.
Yep. I guess.
Once the people come in and present the articles, we ask the question, and then when it's time for AdCom to take a vote, we'll deliberate, and then we take a vote on it. So basically, it's not difficult. It's a procedural. We have to listen. We'll ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
We can agree. We can disagree. It doesn't have to be unanimous. We'll see what happens, and then once we take the vote, you can then write up the article.
Okay.
Okay. We'll walk you through. Don't worry. It's
okay. Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
Not tough. So that's for the article. So based on that, I don't see a need of having a meeting next week unless somebody has a good reason why we should have a meeting next week.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
When you assigned the articles, I assumed that what you were asking us to do was each of us who has an article, one or more, to look at the background of those articles before there's a formal presentation to the board.
There is no need, Jack. I think it's.
I've already done that. That's what.
Okay. All right. So would you like a couple more, Jack?
No.
You don't have to because sometimes it's not finalized. We don't know what the final version would be. So it's just to give you an idea that when those department heads come in to make a presentation, that's your article. And then if you have any questions, you can ask more. But that's the intention. It's just to give everybody a heads up. I don't want, I think the worst thing that can happen is if we didn't assign the articles in advance, you have the managers come in, they present, and then the next meeting you say, oh, that's my article, and I forgot. I wasn't paying attention. So that was the reason for it. Tom?
Yeah, what is the schedule for when the CIP is going to be? Is that next week or the following
CIP,
week?
you mean the committee meeting? That's the Saturday.
Next Saturday, yeah.
It is next Saturday, the 6th? Okay,
Yeah.
usually it's the first Saturday set in March, but I wasn't sure if it was pushed off this year. Okay.
No, we're keeping it the first weekend, first Saturday in March.
Okay.
And that'll be televised again, Bill?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Is the agenda or the requisitions going to be posted ahead of time or no?
Yeah, we actually, if you take a look in your, if you look in your budget book, it's actually already located in the budget book.
Oh, that hasn't been changed since that?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Nope. Yeah, so all the capital requests are already listed in there. So what you see is what you get.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So I haven't moved off my initial thoughts on that, was to see how much we can really limit that expenditure this year, and try and limit the use of free cash as much as possible. Because now, as you can see, there are a number of things that, the cameras, the crack in the floor, the things that we'd love to address. And I'd love to be able to do that. But I also have to be responsible looking at the overall numbers and see where it is. And we'll see where that conversation goes. If people on the committee feel otherwise, then, maybe we end up with a different result. But I certainly, I'm going to remain open-minded about that. But I just want to see, I'm just trying to give you a sort of pre-indication that we're going to try and limit that as much as possible.
And then Bill, if I may, I just want to clarify that the way the CIP works is the committee will make the recommendation, and then I believe
Yes.
you present it to the Board of Selectmen for
That's
approval.
correct.
And then it comes to AdCom. So at some point, it's going to go through three process.
That's correct. So it gets reviewed effectively 3 times before it even goes to town meeting. It goes through the CIP process first, and then it goes to the selectmen, then it goes to the AdCom. So there's 3 different separate review processes, and then it goes to the to town meeting for consideration. And by the way, each one of those process reveal is a recommendation and not an actual vote to fund any of those. The town meeting is the only one that actually votes on funding the actual item themselves.
Agree. Thank you, Bill.
Sure.
So that's all I have. I just want to say something else. That's something that happened a couple of weeks ago because a couple members from AdCom asked me. It was regards to a general question Jack asked the board of the new health commissioner, I guess. And then one of the response that we got from the Board of Health was, I thought, it was not what I expected. So I just want to clear the air by saying that what Jack asked was a fair question. There was nothing wrong, no ulterior motive. It's just the response we got back was, it's not what I expected. But I just want to put it out there because a few AdCom members asked about it.
I wasn't at the meeting, so I just want to just interject for 1 second, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't at that meeting, but I did hear about it, and it's unfortunate because I do think that the question was meant in a very collegial type approach that Jack was trying to convey to everyone, and I do think that and the new director is doing a really terrific job, and I really want to make sure that he is successful in his role and that the department and collectively has remained successful in their roles because they're very important to the overall operation of the town. And and it's unfortunate when sometimes things get misinterpreted or felt that they were taken in the wrong vein. But I knowing Jack the way I do, I know that he asked questions for the right reasons, and I think that his comment was taken, I think was taken in an unfortunate way. But I do think that he means his question was meant for all the right things.
Agree.
Mr. Chairman, could I also offer a perspective on that?
Absolutely, Mike.
So I had attended that meeting and I thought that Jack's question was spot on. And he was looking for the perspective from the new guy, a fresh set of eyes coming into our organization. And I thought it was a great question. And it's a question that we asked all of our departments, in fact, all of our employees as they come in, especially as they've come on from other communities doing a similar thing. So it was a great question. And Matt wasn't quite ready to answer the question, but that was okay because Jack had said, offered, you may not be ready to answer this question yet, but something to think about. I think Matt's going to come back to us in some form or another and offer some perspective on that. And I think when an answer was interjected and, that it was an inappropriate question, maybe the question wasn't understood. I'm not quite sure, but I certainly appreciated that question. And it is something that Bill and I do try to draw out of people coming new into the organization. So I appreciated it.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, does anybody have any?
People for your comments.
Go ahead, Jack. We can't hear you.
No, I just want to thank people for their comments tonight, and it's time to move on from it.
Agreed. Thank you.
Fair enough.
Anything else anybody wants to talk about? If not, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second? Okay, we'll do you know what? Let's just raise our hand, a roll call. Everybody says aye. Yes?
Aye.
Okay, we have unanimous, 11-0. Good night, everyone, and I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Mike.
Good night. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.